All right, in this video, we're gonna go over all the different reasons why you don't have spark at your spark plug. So we're gonna get right into it. The first one is gonna be your brake. This is gonna be our example, this Tao Tao quad. And these motors won't try to run unless you have the brake down. And a good quick test is to turn your key on. If your brake light is coming on, that's a good sign. You can also test this with a meter. Out of the back of your brake is a cable. Follow that cable around. And here's the connection here. It is a black and a green wire. What you can do is take your meter leads and back probe the connection. So now with your leads in the connection, you can hit the brake. Go ahead, Everett. And then you see that is making continuity. That brake switch is closing. So this brake switch is working. That's not the cause of your no spark. The next items we want to look at is your kill switches, which on these sometimes there's 3. But you have the kill switch here. If that's on that way, that will kill spark. Your tether, if this is pulled off, that will kill spark. And then obviously your key switch here. If that's off, that'll kill spark. And I'll show you how to group all those 3 into one thing to check. What we want to find is your CDI box, which on this quad it lives underneath, and it's right here, this small box with a green connector. And just because it's easier to show you up on the bench, this is what that CDI box looks like, and then this is the wiring harness that goes to it. Regarding those safeties, all those safeties tie in to this wire right here. This is your, if you're looking at this connector, it's your center row in the middle. It is a black with a white stripe on these Tao Tao quads. If you have a safety activated, this will be grounded to the frame or battery negative. And you can test that with your meter too. So with my CDI box pulled out, I can get my meter and put it on continuity again. I'm gonna take one lead and ground it. And then I'm gonna probe that middle row center terminal. Your black with white stripe. And you can tell that I'm getting continuity to ground right now. So is it my key switch? I'm gonna turn my key switch on. And now there's no more continuity to ground. I'll keep that on there, hit your kill switch, ground. So if you have a continuity to ground on this terminal spot on your CDI box, then one of your safeties is activated. If you don't have a meter but want to find a way of making sure none of your safeties are causing your no spark condition, what you can do is unplug your CDI and go to your wiring harness, and then you can de-pin that pin by pushing in that pin and then popping it out. And taking it off. Now that's going to remove the way that the CDI box stops the engine. So you won't have any way to kill it but to pull your spark plug. But this is a way to try to diagnose your no spark condition. Okay, if your CDI is happy and it's not getting grounded out here, that's great. That means there's no safeties or kill switches causing this quad not to run. From there, I would go to the stator, which lives under here. And you would find the wiring harness that comes out of the stator and trace that out, and this is the connection for it here. Okay, so we're back at the bench, and this is what I mean by stator. These live inside that side cover on your engine. And what these do 2 things. Well, technically 3. This coil right here, the unwrapped one, and this one has some silicone on it. This is the coil that when your rotor or your flywheel spins around, it'll create a current here that will charge your battery. And on these Tao quads, that's gonna be your orange, or not orange, your yellow and white. You can see this has a different connector on it, but your yellow and white are going to correlate with this coil that will charge your battery. That will go to a rectifier. That's a whole nother problem. That will have nothing to do with spark, whether you have spark or not. This coil right here, the one that's wrapped, is your AC power to your CDI. Now, there's two different types of CDIs. There are some that run off of AC power, and there's some that run off of DC power. Your stator in your engine only puts out AC power. You can only get DC power once it goes through the rectifier and it goes to the battery. So on these Tao Tao quads, you have an AC power CDI. And that is charged through your black wire with the red stripe. This one here. And that correlates, that will come and plug into this wiring harness. Again, black wire, red stripe. And that goes to your AC power coil here. The other thing your stator will do is it sends a pulse or a trigger, and that's fired by this magneto on here. And that's signified by your blue wire with a white tracer. Again, blue wire with a white tracer on this connector. And all that's doing is when that flywheel spins around, it's got a piece of metal on it that will pass by this magnet, and that will tell that CDI box when to send a spark to the engine. So it's like your timing. And your CDI stands for capacitor discharge ignition. So that AC power is charging a capacitor in here, and then when this guy, your magneto, tells it when to fire, this guy will send the voltage out to your spark plug. But that pulse wire, that trigger wire, is this one, the blue with white, and that correlates to this guy here. And the best way to test this is on your machine. Some people recommend doing resistance testing to see what the ohms are on each coil, but I've seen these coils vary so greatly from Amazon, from eBay, from China ultimately. I don't recommend that. It's best to get what the voltage is actually being put out on these things. So again, let's take our meter, go to ground. And remember, the only voltage that comes out of your stator is AC. There's no such thing as a DC stator. So let's check our black with white trace, or black with the red tracer first. This is your AC power that's going to charge up your CDI box. And I like to test it at the CDI box and not in the wiring connections, because if I test it here, then I'm going to know all my connections from here to the stator are good. Does that make sense? If I tested it at the stator, I still don't know if that AC power is coming all the way to my CDI box. So let's stab in here and fire the quad over. And you can see I'm getting around 40 volts AC, and that's good. That will charge this CDI box enough to fire. Now, if you're seeing 20 volts or 10 volts or 0 volts, your stator is bad. Okay, now the next thing to test is your pulse or your trigger wire, which again is your blue with white tracer that lives up in your top left on this Tao Tao quad. Now, meters aren't made to catch that signal because it's a very fast signal, but you should still be able to see 0.2 to 0.4 volts. Truly, you need an oscilloscope. I think it's called an oscilloscope. Could be wrong. I don't own one. If you own one, hey man, you probably are smarter than me. So I'm gonna back probe in there. Fire the engine again. And you can see that's putting out 0.2 volts AC. And again, that's that trigger magneto. When that engine spins over and it triggers it, it's saying fire now, fire now, fire now. So that tells me that this stator is putting out the correct AC voltage to charge the CDI and the correct signal to tell that CDI when to fire. Again, we're not checking if your quad isn't charging its own batteries. That's for a different video. Maybe we'll cover that another time. We're just trying to make sure your quad has spark. So now that the CDI, we know it's getting all the inputs that it needs, we want to make sure it's sending out the correct output. And this, from the CDI, it goes to your ignition coil and then to your spark plug. So we're almost nearing the end here. And your ignition wire is your black with the yellow stripe. That's going to be an AC voltage as well that it puts out. So let's back probe that. See, and you can see that was pointing out 0.02 or so. So this one might be a little bit harder to read coming out of your CDI box. But this is where we move on to the coil. Okay, so here's are the coils that I have on my bench here. Again, if you're tracing this out from your CDI box, it is your black wire with a yellow stripe, and then your green is your ground. Sometimes the coil themselves, when you bolt them to the frame, they'll be grounded, but these are wired separately. And again, I'm not a big fan of getting ohms readings on these coils because they can vary so drastically. Put my meter on ohms, put one lead on the ground, and then one lead on your trigger wire. You get 0.3 ohms, which that is, I think it's like 0.2 to 0.4. Now we want to check ohms resistance between your trigger wire all the way to your spark plug. And that's 7.5 kilo ohms. You want that between 6 kilo ohms and 8 or 9 kilo ohms for that to be good. Ultimately, coils very rarely go bad unless they get wet or if wires start getting frayed and pulled. What I would recommend is going straight to the spark plug and check if you're still not getting spark. I would take off your trigger wire or take off your boot off here, which these are molded on. This ain't coming off. But you can use a screwdriver as such and hold it to your frame to where you'd make an air gap between your frame and your pick. And if you see a spark there, that would tell you your spark plug is bad. So that is pretty much all of the items that we've gone through on these quads. Okay guys, so that's pretty much how I diagnose a no spark, especially on these Chinese quads. It's really tempting when you can get on Amazon and you can get a whole wiring harness for 30 bucks and then all the electrical components just to go nuts and buy all the components and replace them all. The thing is, what I've found is that quality is not real high from these places. So even if you get a new part, it still might be bad, and now you are left worse off than where you began. So I would suggest use a meter, learn how to use it. I mean, the knowledge is out there. It's all over YouTube. And then start testing away, man. If it's already broke, you're not going to break it anymore. You might as well learn how to fix it. So, hey, thanks for watching. I hope this helps you out. Get your quad running for your son or your daughter. Have a good one.